The Prinz Eugen is a tier 8 premium German cruiser, known for being remembered differently depending on which generation of people that shares the same interest in history and its related topic. This 20,000 tons of wasted resources is a victim of a forgotten period in World of Warships history, a time where German cruisers was advertised as an AP focused ship. Then Wargaming realized that German ship players doesn't know how to deal damage, yet instead of making the AP better they decide to improve the HE penetration instead. Apparently getting any damage is such a low bar to clear for the average German ship players, but only the old guard knows the real reason behind it. Over the next decade the German cruisers were stuck in this weird state, where they are objectively weak compared to other nations, but apparently this is okay, because VERONICA thinks the mediocrity is part of the appeal, and continue playing with this delusion in mind. But this year is the year of the power creep, which means everything gets adjusted accordingly, the most important one being the addition of repair party for all tier 8 cruisers, and for the Prinz Eugen. It now gets the promised AP focused buff, improved auto bounce angle, and higher alpha damage, which in theory should offset her absolutely pitiful DPM. With only 8 guns, 13 seconds reload, low HE alpha, and a fire chance that contributes to global cooling instead, it would take 1,000 years for the Prinz Eugen to deal meaningful damage, and no amount of HE penetration would make it better. This is why the focus goes back to its AP. They are now more reliable at dealing damage, and they are not to be taken lightly anymore. But there is a catch. This supposedly improved AP still had 2 major design flaws that creates the most frustrating outcome, and I'm not talking about accuracy. These were the shell velocity and the weight of the shell. The high shell velocity means it has a higher chance of doing an over penetration, while the lightweight shell means it does not have the penetration necessary to punch through heavier armor. This is better illustrated when we compare it with the Baltimore. It has slower shell velocity, but has a higher penetration, which means it hits slower and punches harder. This is before you consider that it still has the better auto bounce angle, higher impact angle that prevents even more over penetration, and as an icing on top it gets way better HE. Remember, Americans are the target audience, and the Germans are just second-class internet loppers that still thinks they are relevant. What other country that were okay with doing chemical warfare but crashes out over a simple pump-action shotgun? But yes, under the perfect condition, this ship has the potential to delete cruisers and deal battleship level of damage to battleships. Unfortunately, the ship itself is still the same mediocre, dare I say near unusable, Hipper class heavy cruiser hull. On paper it looks alright, a healthy chunk of HP, 27mm plating, and the armor profile of all time, but in practice it is one of the easiest target for basically anything. To start, it is a very big ship, high freeboard that catches shells, and a lot of superstructures. No amount of HP can compensate the amount of damage this ship would take. Occasionally you can get away with overpens, but most of the time you're just trying to justify rounding errors. However, the biggest flaw of this particular hull is its vulnerability to any HE shells bigger than 220mm. If they hit your amidship, 9 out of 10 times it will disable the engine. What the fuck? The only other type of ships that had to deal with that same issue would be super light cruisers and destroyers, which were perfectly reasonable. This only means that this specific flaw is a deliberate decision by Wargaming, probably a reference to the fact that the Prinz Eugen was quote unquote too complex to operate when she was taken over by American sailors, a fact that stays true to this day the moment you sit inside a German car. And yet this is the kind of thing that Wereboos were okay with, because the entire Hipper class had this flaw since their introduction and nothing gets done to address it. But I digress. I still have to convince you that this ship has a place. To play the Prinz Eugen effectively, you must only load AP, and keep it loaded, because switching to HE is a trap that will give you nothing. With AP loaded, the next obvious step is to find flat broadsides. Normally you would do this by being in the middle of the map, but this isn't ideal for the Prinz Eugen, because it needs a ton of ocean to move around. It lacks a good concealment, and it has a gun arrangement from World War I. What you want to do instead is maintaining that typical kite and retreat position at roughly 15 kilometers away, the only difference being you would now be only shooting AP instead of HE. The thinking behind this is to make the enemy ignore your presence, as your shell bounces against their angled hull, but not all of them. By doing this you create a condition that induces mental stack on the enemy. They are letting a lone ship to deal free damage from open water, and the only thing preventing them to shoot back is their assumption that said ship uses the wrong shell, before eating a big chunk of damage when they open up their broadside. If they caught wind of that early and shoots you, you can dodge, or go to stealth, and wait until they started to engage someone else. You have to play like this because you have to maintain most of your HP for the later half of the game, where the Prinz Eugen real strengths can be utilized, which is its close range capability. 6 torpedoes on each side and a hull design that worked very well only on close quarter engagement. At the very least it couldn't just be deleted immediately, and the signature German hydroacoustic, so you absolutely cannot screw things up. To take advantage of this, we once again come to our favorite companion, which are the islands. Keep them close, and create an absolute area denial where the enemy are forced to deal with you at less than 6 kilometers. This is why this ship is very unpleasant to play. You have to endure the first half of the game of not doing much of anything, and hoping that it pays off at the end, with an added uncertainty of whatever is happening on the other side of the map. The Prinz Eugen had to be played in such a way, just to get a chance at making a mark on any game. It promises greatness by providing constant disappointments, and yet when it works people will have the same reaction as when a German train arrives on time. Yes, it still has equal chance at having a monster game much like every other ship. If you play correctly against the correct enemy, sometime you will get that perfect island that flips the game around and made your day better. But in honesty, as someone with way too many hours playing this game, playing the Prinz Eugen is just a net negative on everything. Doesn't matter if it's a win or a loss, and this is because the Prinz Eugen is the equivalent of a participation award. Tanking damage is not rewarding. Shattering shells is not rewarding. Getting smashed by HE is not rewarding. I know this is not exclusively a Prinz Eugen's problem, but when you compare it to other ships there is simply not enough dopamine to balance them out. It is trying to be a battleship, but the only battleship thing that made it through is her displacement. Again, this ship truly shines when you get to fist fight someone that does not have torpedoes themselves, but if they do, I sure hope you already see them coming. This is how you play the Bikini's bottom. You take last stand, demolition expert, because it's the only skill worth taking, superintendent, and concealment. Then take top grade gunner, heavy AP, your choice between adrenaline rush or survivability expert, and finally grease the gears. For the upgrades you take main armaments mod 1, engine room protection, aiming system, propulsion, and concealment, or steering gears mod 3 depending on your preference. The Prinz Eugen is what I would call the potential cruiser. Despite the name, it remains a flawed ship for many years already, and destined to remain that way, because the Germans can't differentiate between sophistication and stupidity. Meanwhile, the other cruisers gets even more relevant than ever, especially with the addition of repair party for many tech tree cruisers. Now even light cruisers has a better chance at singling out the Prinz Eugen, as they now have more HP to spare, including her own sisters. Even with the improved AP, it is still an inherently handicapped cruiser that is painful to play. You better off with the American heavy cruisers if you really want a reliable AP, but you probably already made that decision anyway. And if you're a regular player, you probably already have the Bludger, which improves many of the shortcomings on the Eugen, but you can't get it anymore, and it is still a hipper class that would still handicap your performance. So who is this ship even for? Well, the unfortunate truth is that the Prinz Eugen is still a famous German warship, a famous shipwreck that you can still visit today, a famous whimsical ship girl, and a famous seaman demon. One of the lowest hanging fruit at getting people legitimately interested in naval history, carrying a lot of historical memories that can be turned into yet another fictional story revolving around sympathizing with the casualties of war. It does not need to be the perfect ship, because it has character, just like owning a German car. But for those that were too salty about everything in the game, there are a lot more logical choice out there, and from this point on, the only debate I will accept regarding the Prinz Eugen is picking which version is the superior one. Now go out there and play the real German cruisers instead. You will have an easier time and a lot more fun without having to think about doing well.
Mamma mia, even if I say